Every alien empire signed the attack, only one refused. By the time the vote reached the final empire, the war had already begun in everyone's imagination. The Hall of Measures displayed the signatures above the central floor in 16 columns of white light. Each column represented an empire. Each seal represented fleets, soldiers, shipyards, colonies, and populations that had agreed to participate in the largest synchronized military action in 3 centuries. Humanity was the target. 14 seals glowed, then 15. The 16th column remained dark. The hall quieted. High Arbiter Jorun raised his head toward the delegation from the Neural Continuance. "Your authorization is incomplete." Neural's representative did not move. "That is correct." Jorun waited. The representative was an older Neural named Savan Tihir. He was not a soldier. He wore no fleet markings and carried no campaign ribbons. Before becoming a state representative, he had spent most of his life studying population movement between Neural's thousands of orbital habitats. There had been jokes about that when he arrived. 15 empires had sent admirals, defense ministers, or hereditary commanders. Neural had sent a man who counted where people lived. Jorun's voice hardened. The coordinated action requires unanimity. Then it does not have unanimity. The first angry murmurs rolled through the chamber. General Maresh of the Urati Dominion stood. "You would protect them?" "No." "You would warn them?" "No, then sign." Savan looked at the 15 glowing seals. "No." The room erupted. I watched from the command gallery above the voting floor, where junior operational officers from participating empires had been assigned to observe the signing before returning to their fleets. My name was Tarek Ivan. At that time, I was a navigation warfare officer aboard the Tolmeri battleship Resolute Vow, and I thought Savantir was the most pathetic creature in the chamber. We had spent 9 months preparing the attack. Humanity possessed 12 major inhabited systems beyond Sol, 7 fleet anchorages, 23 large industrial stations, and hundreds of smaller installations. Their territory was wide but shallow. Their total military tonnage was less than 1/3 of the combined force gathered against them. They had irritated nearly every major power in the region. They crossed disputed spaces without requesting ceremonial passage. They established settlements faster than treaties could be written. They treated hereditary borders as legal questions instead of sacred facts. They sold defensive equipment to small civilizations that larger empires preferred to keep dependent. Worst of all, they had developed a habit of answering threats without behaving threatened. No one incident had caused the war. That was what made the war so easy to approve. Every empire had a grievance. Every empire believed another would eventually attack humanity anyway. So someone proposed that we do it together. A single overwhelming strike. 12 systems, 7 anchorages, 23 industrial stations, 1 synchronized opening. Humanity would wake to discover that every meaningful military and industrial center it possessed had been struck at once. There would be nowhere to reinforce, nowhere to concentrate, nowhere to recover. The planners called it the closed hand. Savantir called it something else. When the shouting finally dropped enough for him to speak, he faced the chamber and said, "You have designed an excellent plan for destroying places." General Maresh laughed. "That is normally what military plans are for." Savan looked at him. "You believe those places are humanity?" That stopped the room for perhaps 2 seconds. Then the laughter became louder. I laughed too. I remember that. It matters that I remember. Jorun struck the floor with the authority staff. "Representative Tyr, the human population is concentrated in those systems. Their production is concentrated there. Their fleet support is concentrated there. Their government operates from recognized capitals. Their colonies are physical objects occupying physical space. Unless Neural has discovered a civilization that exists without locations, your objection appears philosophical." Savan's expression did not change. It is demographic that produced more laughter. Savan continued anyway. For 200 years, the strategic assumptions of every empire in this hall have been built around settled civilizations. Our populations remain attached to ancestral planets, permanent stations, sacred capitals, fixed industrial basins, and inherited infrastructure. When we lose a place, we lose what was in that place. He pointed toward the projection of human territory. Humans do not behave that way. Meresh spread his arms. They have planets, yes. Cities, yes. Shipyards, yes. Then they are settled. Savan shook his head. No. They are currently located. The distinction seemed ridiculous. The Orathi delegation openly mocked it. My own commander later called it the most expensive grammatical objection in diplomatic history. Joron gave Savan one final opportunity. The continuance will either authorize participation or formally refuse. Savan looked upward at the 15 shining signatures. Niril refuses. The final column stayed dark. The closed-hand treaty automatically adjusted. 15 participating empires. One abstention. The war would continue without Niril. As we left the chamber, an Orathi officer called after Savan. When this is finished, humanity will remember who stood with them. Savan stopped. For a moment I thought he would turn. He did not. He said only, I am more concerned with what you will remember. 6 days later, we entered human space. The first phase went better than the planners had predicted. That was the beginning of the disaster. Our target was Havenfall, a human colony orbiting a yellow star near the Tolmeri frontier. Havenfall was important enough to matter and small enough to destroy quickly. It possessed 2 major orbital yards, a naval resupply complex, surface factories, and a population of 31 million. Our task force contained 42 capital ships and nearly 300 escorts. Havenfall's permanent defense fleet contained 11 major warships. We arrived exactly on schedule. The human fleet was gone, not hiding. Gone. The orbital yards had been shut down, cargo berths were empty. Most civilian traffic had vanished. The defense platforms fired only long enough to force us into proper combat formation, then shut themselves down. We approached the primary station expecting a trap. There was none. Boarding parties entered. No defenders, no workers, no technicians, no command personnel. The station's atmosphere had been reduced to maintenance pressure. Portable equipment had been removed. Data cores were blank. Even the furniture had been strapped for storage. The place did not look abandoned. That would have been easier to understand. It looked packed. Commander Jesh Orlan stood beside me on the navigation deck while our reports arrived. Population, surface scans show approximately 19 million. He looked at me. Previous count, 31 million. Where did 12 million humans go? I checked civilian traffic history. That was when I noticed the first strange thing. They had not evacuated in one fleet. There had been no dramatic convoy. No emergency departure large enough to trigger our surveillance. Instead, for 9 months, Havenfall had been leaking people. Passenger ships carrying 1,200, freighters carrying 400, mining vessels carrying 80, private ships carrying families. Hospital transports, university vessels, construction barges, survey craft, retirement habitats, agricultural platforms. The population had not fled. It had diffused. I pulled traffic data from the other targeted systems. The pattern was everywhere, not identical. That was important. Humans had not followed a centralized evacuation schedule. There was no single command order we could locate. Different systems had begun at different times. Different percentages had left. Different vessel types had been used. Some populations moved inward toward Sol. Others moved outward. Some scattered into minor human settlements. Some disappeared into neutral space. Some joined mobile industrial groups. Some simply changed addresses. I remember staring at the traffic plot. Thousands of tiny movements, individually meaningless, collectively enormous. Commander Orlan leaned over my station. What is it? I think they knew. That is impossible. I almost agreed. The closed-hand plan had been compartmentalized. Even our own captains had received final target packages only 72 hours before departure. But humanity did not need to know the plan. That was what I understood later. They only needed to know something was changing. Insurance prices had risen around hostile borders. Alien military leave had been canceled. Navigation exclusions had appeared. Civilian shipping had been redirected away from certain fleet zones. Shipyards across 15 empires had accelerated maintenance schedules. Diplomatic families had quietly returned home. Mobilization left fingerprints. Humans had noticed the fingerprints, and instead of guessing exactly where we would strike, they had reduced the value of being struck anywhere. Commander Arlen dismissed the concern. People can leave, factories cannot. He was correct. For another 4 hours, our ground forces landed near Havenfall's largest industrial zone. The factories were there. Buildings kilometers long, assembly halls, refineries, machine works, power systems, storage fields. Most were intact. The production lines were not. Human engineers had removed specialized components. Not the largest parts. Not even the most expensive. They had taken the parts that required the longest time to reproduce. Control units, calibration tools, manufacturing templates, precision heads, specialty bearings, software keys, training databases, small things, movable things, things that turned a building full of machinery into an actual factory. The Tolmeri occupation commander reported that Havenfall's industrial capacity had been reduced by 80% without the humans destroying a single major structure. We had captured the factories. The humans had taken the ability to use them. Still, no one called it failure. Across the front, reports were magnificent. The Orati took Borealis anchorage in 3 hours. The Keshan captured 2 lunar shipyards without losing a capital ship. The Ardelian Empire occupied the Surface Command complex on Meridian. The Vask coalition seized 3 human industrial stations. The closed hand had struck every primary target within 17 minutes of schedule. On the 7th hour of the war, High Arbiter Jorun transmitted the official announcement. The human military structure has been decapitated. Every bridge in the attacking coalition played the message. Crews cheered. I did too. Then our long-range tracking system began producing errors. At first, we blamed software. Human shipping numbers were increasing. That made no sense. We had captured their major ports, destroyed several naval depots, occupied key systems. Civilian traffic should have collapsed. Instead, more human vessels were appearing, thousands of them. Most were small, some were ancient, others were improvised. They came from secondary colonies we had barely cataloged, from mining clusters, from independent habitats, from deep space research platforms, from commercial routes, from systems whose populations had supposedly been strategically irrelevant. They were moving everywhere. No unified direction, no common destination. At first I thought it was panic. Then I noticed something else. The ships were not moving randomly, they were moving socially. Family clusters stayed together. Industrial teams moved with specialized equipment. Medical vessels joined population groups. Engineers joined ships carrying machine tools. Agricultural experts traveled with seed archives and habitat equipment. Teachers moved with children. Small defense craft positioned themselves around vulnerable groups. Humanity was not evacuating its civilization. It was carrying civilization with it. That was the moment I first remembered Savan Tier. Not his refusal, his grammar currently located. By the second day, the closed hand had become a problem no one had planned to solve. We owned the targets. Humanity remained. Our original strategy had assumed a civilization was a hierarchy of valuable locations. Homeworld, capital, fleet base, shipyard, factory, colony. Destroy enough important locations and the civilization loses the ability to coordinate resistance. It had worked against every empire in recorded strategic history. The Keth surrendered after losing 2 sacred shipbuilding moons. The Ossen fragmented when their central command world fell. The Tolmeri Empire itself had ended 3 ancient wars by capturing hereditary capitals. Human analysts knew this. They had read our histories. They had simply drawn a different conclusion from them. They had spent generations making sure that losing a place did not automatically mean losing what the place did. Not completely. Nothing was magical. Human shipyards still mattered. Their planets mattered. Their cities mattered. Millions of people remained on worlds we now threatened, but important was not the same as irreplaceable. That distinction began killing the closed hand. The first military evidence came from the Keshan front. A human carrier group appeared near the occupied system of Morrow. The Keshan commander expected them to attack the captured shipyard. They did not. They passed the system at extreme range. The Keshan pursued. That was sensible. A carrier group was more valuable than an empty shipyard. The humans accelerated toward a mining region. The Keshan divided their formation to approach from two directions. The humans divided theirs. The Keshan divided again, so did the humans. Within 5 hours, one human carrier group had become 9 separate contacts moving along 9 independent vectors. The Keshan commander had a choice: abandon pursuit or divide further. He divided. That was the human objective. They were not strong enough to fight the combined Keshan force. They had no intention of doing so, but 9 smaller Keshan formations were different. 3 human groups reversed course. 2 accelerated around planetary bodies. 1 disappeared behind a moon. The Keshan battle line, built to fight as a concentrated formation, found itself spread across millions of kilometers. The humans attacked only one section. Then they left. The Keshan attempted to recombine. The humans attacked another. Then another. Not recklessly, not continuously. They chose moments when local numbers favored them. If the Keshan concentrated, the humans scattered. If the Keshan scattered, the humans concentrated. The Keshan had enough total firepower to destroy the human carrier group several times over. They could never bring that total firepower to the same place at the same time. By the end of the 3rd day, they had lost 6 major ships and abandoned the pursuit. The human carrier group was damaged. It also remained operational. Our commanders studied the battle. They called it clever. They did not yet call it dangerous. Then it happened again and again. Humanity had designed its wartime behavior around something the attacking empires considered weakness: separation. We believed military power came from concentration. Humans agreed when concentration benefited them. Then, at the moment concentration became dangerous, they stopped treating it as a virtue. Their fleets broke into smaller formations. Their industries dispersed production. Their governments delegated emergency authority. Their populations moved through countless independent routes. Their military objectives became local. Protect this convoy. Delay this pursuer. Move these specialists. Preserve this archive. Escort these children. Disable that sensor platform. Recover that crew. No single mission looked decisive together. They made decisive victory impossible. On the 4th day, High Arbiter Jarun issued a new order. Human mobile groups are to be treated as secondary targets. Occupied systems will be fortified. The enemy must eventually return to recover strategic assets. That was when Commander Orlan finally looked worried. He stood beside my navigation table, watching human movement across Havenfall space. They are not coming back. I looked at the surface. Millions of humans remained. Yes, they will. No. He enlarged the traffic map. The humans who had stayed on Havenfall were not behaving like prisoners awaiting liberation. Local councils were negotiating basic occupation rules. Civilian utilities continued operating. Human technicians maintained systems we required to keep the planet functional. No large underground uprising had begun. No mass assault was forming. At first, we interpreted that as surrender. Then occupation authorities started asking the residents when the human military would return. The humans gave variations of the same answer. Why? The question infuriated our officers. Havenfall mattered. It had factories, shipyards, population, history. Surely humanity would spend lives to reclaim it, but the humans had no deadline. The planet was not destroyed. Its people were not being exterminated. Its cities remained. If humanity attacked immediately, millions of civilians would be caught inside a major battle. So they did not attack. They simply continued the war elsewhere. We had captured a prize that demanded hundreds of thousands of occupation personnel, constant defensive patrols, supply shipments, and repair crews. Humanity had lost the use of Havenfall. We had lost the use of an entire fleet holding it. Across 15 empires, the same arithmetic appeared. Every conquered human world consumed attackers. Every mobile human population created more destinations. Every attempt to pursue one human formation created opportunities elsewhere. The closed hand had been designed to prevent human forces from reinforcing one another. Instead, humanity stopped requiring reinforcement in the way we understood it. They did not ask, "Where is the main battle?" They asked, "What can this group accomplish here?" At first, that seemed smaller. Then the reports accumulated. A human destroyer squadron disabled an Orati communications relay and vanished before retaliation arrived. A civilian repair collective restored a damaged defense platform around an unlisted colony. A group of former asteroid miners converted survey vessels into sensor pickets. A medical fleet moved through a supposedly secured region under escort from 3 tiny patrol craft. A human naval force appeared behind a vast formation, struck its exposed support vessels, and disappeared into a cloud of civilian traffic too large to search without delaying the entire campaign. The attacking coalition still had more ships, far more. But we had built our advantage into large formations aimed at large objectives. Humanity kept making the objectives smaller. The message from Neril arrived on the 5th day, not to us, to everyone. Savantier appeared on every diplomatic channel with the same expression he had worn in the Hall of Measures. No triumph, no mockery. That irritated people more than either would have. The Neril continuance declares its territory neutral to all belligerents, he said. Human civilian vessels requesting emergency passage will be permitted transit under disarmament inspection. Military vessels of any participant will not be permitted to use Neril territory for pursuit, staging, or attack. General Maresh responded within minutes. "So now you reveal your allegiance," Savan answered publicly. "Neril is allied with Neril. You are giving human sanctuary. We are allowing civilian passage. You knew they would do this." There was a pause. Savan tilted his head. "Yes." That one word changed the tone of every command conference in the coalition. For 5 days, Savan had been a coward. Now he was something more dangerous. A man who had been correct. Jurun demanded his analysis. Savan released it. Not military intelligence. Population research. 37 years of migration records. That was what humiliated us. There was no secret human weapon in his report, no stolen battle plan, no hidden admiral's testimony, no classified encounter proving human invincibility. There were housing records, shipping patterns, colonial census movements, emergency response studies, human disaster history, refugee relocation statistics, temporary settlements, seasonal workforce transfers, university migration, industrial modularity. One page contained a chart showing how quickly human populations moved after hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, reactor failures, wars, droughts, economic collapses, and habitat accidents. Another showed something even stranger. After each disaster, many humans did not return. They rebuilt somewhere else, or built differently, or divided communities, or merged them, or carried institutions into new locations. Savan's conclusion was a single paragraph. Human civilization exhibits unusually low identity dependence on specific physical sites. Territory carries emotional, economic, and strategic value, but continuity is strongly attached to people, portable institutions, replicated knowledge, and voluntary association. A campaign optimized for simultaneous destruction or seizure of fixed nodes risks removing human assets without removing human agency. Commander Orlan read it twice. Then he said he refused a war because of census data. "No," I said. Orlan looked at me. I understood the distinction now. He refused because the plan was built on the wrong definition of target. The coalition tried to repair the strategy. That was when we turned a difficult war into a catastrophe. Jorun called an emergency conference. I attended remotely with Commander Orlan. 15 commanders appeared in separate projections. Savan was invited. He declined. General Maresh wanted direct escalation against Earth. The humans may move factories, he said. They may scatter fleets. Their homeworld cannot run. Several commanders agreed. Strike Earth hard enough and humanity would be forced to concentrate. Others proposed hunting mobile populations, not civilian destruction officially. Strategic interdiction. Identify convoys containing skilled workers, government personnel, Naval families, industrial equipment, or technical archives. Capture enough of them and human mobility would become a liability. The Tolmeri delegation supported that approach, so did I. I wish I could say otherwise. The new directive was called the Net. Every mobile human group would be classified by strategic value. High-value groups would be pursued. The goal was to force humanity to defend too many people in too many places. For 12 hours, it seemed brilliant. Then we discovered the second assumption we had made. We thought human dispersal was disorder. It was not. It was choice. There is a difference. A disorganized population does not know where it is going. A distributed population does not require everyone to go to the same place. Human convoys changed course independently. Civilian captains made local decisions. Military escorts were authorized to abandon predetermined routes. Settlements accepted strangers without waiting for central allocation. Private vessels refueled military ships. Military ships escorted private vessels. Medical crews crossed jurisdictional boundaries. Colonial authorities recognized credentials from other human governments without months of verification. People who had never met began cooperating because they shared procedures that assumed cooperation was possible. The Net required us to classify human groups. The humans kept changing what the groups were. A convoy that looked industrial divided. Half its technicians transferred to passenger ships. Machine tools moved aboard mining craft. Data archives were copied. Children were transferred away from valuable equipment. Military escorts detached. New escorts arrived. A target category existed for 6 hours and then ceased to exist. Our intelligence systems hated it. They were designed to identify units. A fleet was a fleet. A government ship was a government ship. A civilian transport was a civilian transport. A refinery ship was a refinery ship. Human vessels behaved as though categories were suggestions. The first major failure of the Net occurred in the Pelion Drift. An Orati pursuit group found what appeared to be a high-value human industrial convoy, 47 large ships, mobile machine shops, reactor components, thousands of engineers. Exactly the kind of capability the coalition wanted to capture. The Orati approached from 3 vectors. Human escorts appeared. Only 14 warships. Maresh personally commanded the interception. He sent one message: power down and prepare for inspection. The human convoy continued accelerating. Maresh ordered pursuit. The humans separated, not the escorts. The convoy, 47 industrial vessels, moved onto 47 different trajectories. The Orati force hesitated. That hesitation was enough. The human escorts did not defend all 47 ships. They defended whichever vessel the Orati chose to chase. Maresh selected 8 targets. The humans concentrated around those 8. He changed targets. So did they. He split his forces. The human escorts split less. That detail mattered. Maresh expected them to mirror him. They refused. Some industrial ships escaped undefended. The humans accepted that risk. They did not attempt perfect protection. They attempted sufficient survival. 8 hours later, Maresh had captured 3 industrial vessels. He had lost 4 warships. 37 human industrial ships had escaped. 7 had been damaged badly enough to abandon their equipment, after which their crews were collected by other vessels. Maresh called the operation a partial success. Humanity called it Tuesday. That phrase appeared in an intercepted civilian transmission and spread through our fleets. We hated it. Not because it was clever, because it was ordinary. The humans were adapting to a war involving 15 empires faster than 15 empires were adapting to humans. On the 7th day, the attack on Earth was authorized. That should have been the climax. It was not. The coalition assembled more than 600 major warships for the sole operation. Nothing humanity possessed could match the fleet in direct tonnage. Human forces defended the outer system, but they did not form a final battle line. They fought delaying engagements, short, violent contacts. They withdrew before being trapped. They damaged what they could. They preserved what they could. Every hour we advanced toward Earth. Every hour civilian traffic moved away from Earth. I had assumed evacuation of the human homeworld would be impossible. Billions lived there. I was correct. Humanity did not try. Most stayed. That confused us again. If Earth was essential, humanity should have concentrated everything to defend it. If Earth was not essential, humanity should have abandoned it. Humans chose neither. Earth mattered enormously. So did surviving. Those ideas were not treated as contradictions. The human government issued an open message. Earth would be defended. But no military commander was authorized to sacrifice forces solely to preserve symbolic possession of orbit. No civilian government was required to remain on Earth to prove legitimacy. No fleet was required to die because retreat looked dishonorable. No population was told that losing control of the sky meant losing humanity. The message made little sense to us. General Maresh called it preparation for defeat. Then our fleet entered the inner system. Human defenses struck from everywhere except where we wanted them. Small formations attacked our forward sensors. Others targeted isolated ships that drifted outside mutual support. Electronic warfare vessels created false tracks. Civilian observatories fed targeting information into military networks. Old patrol craft served as couriers when communications became unreliable. Tugs moved damaged ships. Private medical vessels collected crews. Nothing remained neatly inside the category we had assigned it. Still, we advanced. We crossed Mars' orbit. Earth appeared on long-range displays. Blue, white, completely ordinary. I expected some great human fleet to appear. None did. Joron transmitted surrender terms. No answer. He transmitted again. This time a human woman appeared. Her name was Admiral Kira Solano. I had never seen her before. She looked exhausted. There was a bandage along one side of her forehead and dark marks beneath her eyes. Behind her, the command space was cramped enough that I initially thought the transmission came from a destroyer. Later we learned she was aboard a converted survey ship, the Supreme Human Theater Commander, on a vessel originally designed to map comets. Jorun said, "Your primary system is surrounded." Solano looked toward something outside the transmission frame, then back. "Yes. Your major outer defenses are broken. Yes, your fleet is dispersed. Yes, your government has relocated, parts of it. You cannot stop us from entering Earth orbit." Solano considered that, probably not. The coalition command channel went silent. No human commander was supposed to answer like that. Jorun leaned toward the projection. "Then surrender." "No? On what military basis?" Solano's expression changed slightly. Not amusement. Something closer to confusion. "You keep asking us to surrender places. We are asking humanity to surrender." "No, you keep naming coordinates." Jorun's face tightened. "Earth is not a coordinate." "Agreed." "Then you understand." "Yes." "Then surrender." "No." For the first time, Solano sounded tired of the conversation. Earth matters because people matter. Mars matters because people matter. Havenfall matters because people matter. Ships matter because people are aboard them. Governments matter because people consent to them. Factories matter because people use what they make. You keep taking the containers and asking why the contents continue behaving independently. Jorun replied, "A civilization cannot survive indefinitely without territory." Maybe not. That answer surprised us almost as much as her refusal. Solano continued, "But you are 7 days into a war designed to end us in 9 hours. No one spoke. I looked at the original closed hand schedule beside my station. She was right. The war had been designed to be effectively decided during its opening. 7 days later, the coalition possessed enormous sections of human territory. And our operational position was getting worse. The human fleet had not defeated us. That was the terrifying part. Not yet. We had defeated our own timetable. Every day we remained, our fleets spread farther apart. Every occupied system required protection. Every human group we pursued pulled ships away from major formations. Every force concentrated against Earth created openings elsewhere. Our coalition had been built for synchronized attack. It was not built for 15 empires to fight 15,000 separate problems. Jorun ended the transmission. Then he gave the order to advance. The strongest moment of the war came 19 hours later. Not at Earth. At Neril, General Maresh broke coalition orders. His forces had suffered more from human mobile attacks than any other major contingent. He had become convinced that Neril's neutral corridor was allowing human civilian movement to sustain the war. He demanded passage through Neril territory. Savantir refused. Maresh entered anyway. That decision changed everything. Neril had not joined the war. Until then, its fleets were smaller than Arati's. Its military reputation was unremarkable. Its strategic value came mainly from location. Neril territory connected 3 regions through a cluster of stable transit corridors. Maresh believed Savan would retreat rather than risk war. He was wrong. The Neril fleet positioned itself across the passage, not beside human ships, in front of Orati ships. Savan transmitted personally. "Turn around," Maresh answered. "You would fight 15 empires for humans?" "No." "Then move. I would fight 1 empire for Neril." Maresh threatened him. Savan did not move. Then something happened that no closed-hand planner had considered. The coalition fractured, not politically, operationally. Several empires refused to support Maresh's violation of Neril neutrality. Others argued that allowing one member to attack a non-participant would transform the war from a joint human campaign into unrestricted regional conflict. The Keshan withdrew their ships from nearby pursuit operations. The Tolmeri government ordered Commander Orlan not to assist Orati forces. 3 smaller empires demanded an emergency conference. Maresh suddenly discovered that the 15 signatures above the Hall of Measures had never created one empire. They had created 15 empires temporarily doing the same thing. Humanity's dispersal had been testing that fact for a week. Now Neril's refusal exposed it completely. A coalition works best when everyone shares one objective. But after 7 days, objectives had multiplied. Orati wanted human mobile industry destroyed. Tolmeri wanted our occupied world stabilized. Keshan wanted to recover damaged fleet strength. Ardelians wanted negotiations. 2 empires wanted control of captured human stations. 3 wanted reparations. 1 wanted to leave immediately. No one wanted to fight Neril, except Maresh. His ships entered Neril space. Neril fired warning shots. Maresh continued. Then Admiral Solano did something none of us expected. Human ships moved away. They had civilian vessels inside Neril territory, military escorts too. Solano ordered the military ships to leave the corridor. She refused to let humanity turn Neril's border dispute into a convenient ambush. That choice cost the humans. Without Neril passage, several human groups had to take longer routes. 1 convoy was later intercepted, but the political effect was enormous. Savan had refused to join the attack. Now humanity refused to use his neutrality as a weapon. For the first time since the war began, I understood something about human strategy that was not about movement. They were not trying to maximize every advantage. They were trying to preserve the kind of future in which other civilizations could still make choices. Maresh entered deeper. Neril disabled his lead ships. The fight was brief and limited. No grand battle, no secret superweapon, just a border being defended because its owner had said no. The Orati demanded coalition support. None came. Maresh withdrew. 2 hours later, the Keshan government announced suspension of offensive operations against humanity. 4 hours later, the Ardelian fleet halted its advance. The coalition did not collapse because humans destroyed it. It collapsed because the war stopped meaning the same thing to everyone participating in it. The closed hand had required 15 empires to act as one. Humanity survived by remaining many things at once. The contrast became impossible to ignore. The Tolmeri government ordered us home on the 9th day, exactly 9 days after the war that was supposed to be decided in 9 hours. Commander Orlan received the message in silence. We still occupied Havenfall. Our fleet had suffered moderate losses. Militarily, we had not been defeated there. That made withdrawal harder to accept. I looked at the planet beneath us. Human cities glowed on the night side. Millions of people still lived there. Our soldiers controlled the orbital stations. Our flag had been raised over the largest shipyard. By every traditional measure, Havenfall was ours. Commander Orlan asked me a question. What happens if we leave? The humans regain orbital control, the factories. They will restore them eventually. The shipyards? The same. The planet? Yes. He stared at the display. So we lose. I thought of Sivan. Currently located. No, I said. Orlan turned. I was careful. You are asking the same question they stopped asking. His expression hardened. I continued anyway. We keep defining victory as who possesses Havenfall. Humanity defined victory as whether Havenfall's loss ended their ability to continue. It did not. That does not answer me. No. I looked at the planet. It doesn't. For once, uncertainty felt more accurate than doctrine. We withdrew. Not in panic. Not under direct pursuit. The humans did not attack our departing fleet. That irritated some officers. They wanted a battle, something clean enough to classify victory, defeat, retreat, pursuit. Instead, a human traffic controller contacted us as our ships passed the system boundary. Tolmeri formation, your current vector intersects civilian outbound traffic in 6 hours. Recommend correction 2 degrees stellar north. Commander Orlan stared at the message. They are giving us navigation advice. I checked the trajectory. They are correct. He closed his eyes. Of course they are. We changed course. The war ended formally 11 days later. Not with surrender. With 15 separate agreements. That was fitting. Humanity refused a single coalition settlement because the coalition no longer operated as a single authority. Each empire had entered for different reasons. Humans insisted each leave for reasons it could actually commit to. Tolmeri signed a cessation of hostilities and evacuation agreement. Keshan negotiated prisoner exchanges. Ardelia reopened diplomatic channels. 2 empires paid compensation for civilian infrastructure they had destroyed. One refused and remained technically hostile for another year without significant fighting. Orathi held out longest. General Maresh lost command. His government eventually accepted a border settlement after discovering that no other empire intended to restart the war simply to preserve Orathi pride. Niril signed nothing. It had never entered. That fact became famous. At first, the galaxy repeated the story incorrectly. They said Niril had known humans were too strong. They said Seventir had discovered a secret military assessment. They said human fleets had frightened him. They said he had secretly supported humanity from the beginning. All of that made the story easier. Sivan hated the easier version. 3 years after the war, I met him. By then, I had left active fleet service. Not because I had become a pacifist, I had not. I still believed military force was sometimes necessary. What changed was my faith in maps. I began studying the relationship between population behavior and military planning that eventually brought me to Neril. Savan had returned to his old institute, no grand office, no ceremonial guard. I found him in a habitat planning room arguing with 3 students about water distribution. He recognized my name. Tolmeri. Yes, Havenfall. I was surprised. You remember? I read occupation movement reports, of course he did. We sat beside a transparent wall overlooking the habitat interior. Thousands of Niril civilians moved along bridges between residential towers. No one below knew that I had once been part of the fleet that mocked the man beside me. I asked him the question I had carried for 3 years. When did you know we would lose? Sivan frowned. I did not. But you refused. Yes, because you believed the plan would fail. I believed the plan misunderstood what it was attacking. That sounds like the same thing, it is not. He leaned back. If humanity had been weaker, you might have killed enough people to make the distinction irrelevant. The bluntness surprised me. Savan continued, if your coalition had been more adaptable, you might have changed strategy faster. If human governments had panicked, their population networks might have fragmented. If their local institutions had failed, dispersal could have become chaos. There were many ways humans could have lost. Then why refuse? Because the promised certainty was false. That answer bothered me. Savan saw it. You want something more dramatic, I suppose? A secret? Yes, he smiled faintly. There was no secret. He pointed toward the habitat below. Look. I looked. What do you see? People? Where is Neural? I gestured around us. Here. No. He pointed to a transport moving between towers. Some there, then to a school complex. Some there, then toward the distant docking ring, some leaving. He touched the table and brought up a star map. Millions of Neural citizens lived outside the home system. Temporary workers, students, families, scientists, traders, pilgrims. Savan said, empires like to imagine themselves as shapes on maps. It makes power visible, it makes loss visible too. Humans are unusually comfortable with the idea that a society can remain itself while the shape changes. I thought about Havenfall empty shipyards. Packed factories. Families leaving one by one months before our arrival. Why? I asked human researchers that, and they argued with each other. I laughed. Savan did too. That, he said, was perhaps the most human result available. He became serious. Some blamed their history of migration, some pointed to disasters. Some to colonization, some to political traditions, some to economics. Some said humans are deeply attached to places and my entire theory was exaggerated. Were they right? Also yes, I stared at him. That is not useful. It was useful enough to keep Neural out of your war. I could not argue with that. Before I left, I asked one final question. Did you ever speak with Admiral Solano? Once? What did she say? Savan looked embarrassed. She corrected my paper. I waited. She said I had described humanity as too adaptable. I thought I had misunderstood. Too adaptable. She said adaptation sounds painless when described afterward. Savan's eyes moved toward the habitat window. She told me every relocation in my charts contained people leaving homes they loved. Every distributed institution existed because someone had spent years making copies, training replacements, building trust, and arguing over procedures. Every flexible response depended on people being willing to do difficult, ordinary things before anyone knew whether they would matter. He paused. Then she said the galaxy had learned the wrong lesson if it believed humans simply did not care where they lived. I remembered Earth on the tactical display, blue, white, surrounded, not abandoned, defended, but not worshipped through pointless sacrifice. What was the right lesson? Savan answered immediately, that they know the difference between what they love and what they cannot live without. Years passed, Havenfall rebuilt. I visited once. The primary orbital yard had changed. Talmeri occupation forces had damaged part of it during withdrawal, and the humans had decided not to restore the original layout. The new yard was smaller. Several functions that had once been concentrated there now existed in separate facilities across neighboring systems. Human planners called that inefficient during peacetime. Then they built it anyway. I met Admiral Solano there. She had retired. She was shorter than I expected. That seemed important somehow. History had made her enormous in my imagination. Reality had not bothered. We stood near a viewing window while ships moved through the yard. I told her I had met Savan. She smiled. He's still making maps. Population models. Same addiction. I asked whether she had known Neural would refuse the attack. No. Did humanity ask them to? No. Did you know the attack was coming? We knew something was coming. How? She shrugged. You can hide orders. Mobilization is harder. That confirmed what I had suspected. Why didn't you concentrate the fleet before the attack? Because we didn't know where the attack would fall. You could have defended the major systems, and guessed correctly. You abandoned some of them? Her expression tightened. We evacuated people from some of them, not all. No, there was weight in that word. Suddenly the clean strategic diagrams felt obscene. I had spent years studying dispersal curves, percentage movement, population redistribution, industrial portability. To Solano, every number had been a person. She continued, there was no perfect option. People died, ships were lost, families were separated, some colonies were occupied, some people refused evacuation and then regretted it, others evacuated and regretted leaving. We made mistakes every hour, but it worked. Enough of it worked. That phrase reminded me of the Pelion Drift. The human escorts had not saved every industrial ship. They had saved enough, not perfection. Continuity. I looked through the window. Do humans have a name for the doctrine? Solano laughed. Which doctrine? The dispersion strategy that depends which committee you ask. The idea that civilization can move, she thought. We have names for pieces of it. Continuity planning. Resilience. Distributed readiness. Civil defense. Mission command. Mutual aid. Modular industry. Emergency migration. She shook her head. But if you want one grand human doctrine, you'll be disappointed. That seems common. We're very good at disappointing anyone looking for one answer. A small passenger vessel passed outside. Children crowded its viewing ports. Solano watched it. We didn't survive because planets stopped mattering. I know. We survived because losing one thing didn't require us to lose everything connected to it. That was better than any doctrine name. I wrote it down later. The Hall of Measures still exists. The attack authorization display does too. For decades, visitors came to see the famous 15 white seals and the single empty column. Eventually, the museum administrators changed the exhibit. Not the history, the interpretation. Originally, the plaque beneath the display read, "The refusal that saved Neril." Seven objected to it for years. After his death, the Institute submitted a replacement. It now reads, 15 emperors agreed on where humanity was. One asked, whether that was the same as what humanity was. Visitors usually stand there for a while. Most look at the empty 16th column. I look at the 15 that are filled. That is where the lesson is. The danger was never that 15 empires were stupid. They were not. Their admirals were competent. Their fleets were powerful. Their first attacks succeeded. Their maps were accurate. Their target lists were real. Their calculations were internally sound. They simply started with one assumption no calculation could repair. They believed civilization was the territory beneath it. Humanity loved its territory, defended it, returned to it, rebuilt it. But when the galaxy closed a fist around those places, humans did what the closed hand had never been designed to survive. They opened their own. And everything we thought we had trapped moved between our fingers.